Since 1977, every new main movie of the Star Wars saga starts with this iconic text scrawl, a yellow font in front of the dark universe with some shiny stars in the background. And I am here to say that I just don't like it anymore. But before you start smashing that dislike button, let me explain my thoughts about it. After that, you can dislike the video and tell me in the comments how much you disagree with my opinion. The crawl has basically been the same over the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the sequel trilogy. In the first movie, it wasn't even a text animation. It was a simple effect made with a glass panel and a moving camera. Yes, back in the days, it wasn't even possible to create an animation like this on a computer. It's not the only movie franchise that relies on text to tell exposition, but in case of Star Wars, the crawl seems to be very important to the fan base, and it may just be as important for a good Star Wars movie as lightsabers, Jedi, and Sith are. I understand the nostalgic factor of it, and I'm fully aware that J.J. Abrams had no choice but to keep it in when he started to make the modern-day trilogy. I'm pretty sure he never thought about it anyways, but I think there are better ways to start a movie. Plain text at the beginning of movies seems to be a bit out of fashion nowadays, but back in the days it had an important purpose to fulfill. It was used to explain to the viewer the important background information of the story that were just too extensive to explain in an actual movie, or that would require effects to visualize it that weren't invented yet. George Lucas took a lot of inspiration for Star Wars from the TV series Flash Gordon. This series relied heavily on text to summarize action scenes instead of showing them. It was a cheap possibility and the audience was okay with it, because they didn't know any better. Basically, the text is a leftover from the time where storytelling made its transition from written books to movies. But the movie industry has evolved since then, and with new technologies and new highly creative ways to structure a story, new ways to tell exposition emerged. The next iteration was that a narrator read the first scene of the film and thus laid the foundation for the story, like here in Terminator.
3 billion human lives ended on August 29th, 1997. The survivors of the nuclear fire called the war Judgment.
Is this creative? No. More convenient? Yes. And instead of text on screen, it was now possible to show something that supports the narration, and a perfect example of how to do it is this.
It began with the forging of the Great Rings. 3 were given to the elves, immortal, wisest, and fairest of all beings.
The beginning of the first part of Lord of the Rings has an almost unsolvable task. It has to introduce the viewer into a complex new world, and in addition, it has to summarize the parts of the storyline from The Hobbit and The Silmarillion. Both are also written by the author of The Lord of the Rings. The beginning still manages to unite all these stories while being exciting and atmospheric. Although a voiceover is still used for a large part of the story, it is underlaid with appropriate pictures that underline the atmosphere much better than simple text. But what if the first scene of a movie is not used to just put the plot in front of the viewer? After all, it doesn't reflect the quality of a director or scriptwriter if you can't find a better way to tell your story than to show or read text. So what purpose could an opening scene fulfill otherwise? It is common to start with the protagonist and explain his or her character and circumstances, but that would be exactly the same as if you had no opening scene at all, because you start directly with the main plot. It's much more exciting to introduce someone else in whom the viewer might be more interested than in the hero of the story. If possible, it can be a good idea to dedicate the first scene of a movie to the villain. There is a saying, your movie is only as good as your villain, and this is true. In a classic movie with protagonist and antagonist, the villain carries the story much more than the hero does. 2 excellent examples for villain introductions in the first scene are Inglourious Basterds and Batman: The Dark Knight.
Monsieur, à votre famille et à vos vaches, je dis bravo.
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
These scenes are not necessary for the story. They could easily be removed and it would still be easy to understand everything that happens afterwards. But they serve a much more important purpose. They present us Hans Lander and the Joker and give credit to these special characters. The dialogue in the farmhouse is exciting and interesting, although they mostly talk French. The dialogue is well written and offers a realism that you hardly find in any other movie. Of course, the great performance of Christopher Waltz is important to be mentioned here, but this scene also teaches us a very important thing. Just because one scene doesn't advance the plot, it can still be an essential part of the movie. The Star Wars crawl, on the other hand, only kicks off the plot and nothing else. Apart from the stars in the background, this scene has nothing to do with Star Wars. The inseparable connection was created by the audience. It seems that many people like the Star Wars crawl because it is the beginning of Star Wars and not because it was a good idea to start it like this. You could put a crawl in front of almost any movie that needs a more detailed exposition, but would that be a good idea? Do we need more crawls? I don't think so, and I also think that Star Wars is much more than letters flying through space. Star Wars doesn't need the crawl, but the crawl needs Star Wars, and if the new movies lack something, it was a development. I am aware that no director would have taken the risk to replace the crawl, but I would have appreciated this change. One thing I would like to show you is a trailer that was created by a fan and that frankly reminds me more of a James Bond intro than a part of a Star Wars movie. What is your opinion about that? I know that Star Wars can be a controversial topic, so I would like to know your opinion on this topic. If you liked the video, I recommend you our Popcorn Forever playlist. Thanks for watching, I'll be back soon with a new video.